Recognized Uncle Walker D01. Recognized Joseph Z D13.
Today in the cave, we have Joseph Z. Joseph and I have been talking behind the scenes about Young Justice, its interpretation of the broader DC universe. But more specifically, we've been talking about the Young Justice fan film that he's working on and about being a creator of fan projects in the modern day. Joseph, thanks for joining us in the cave.
Hey, Rich. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
You bet. Before we begin, I want to remind everyone that our discussion sessions draw on anything and everything related to Young Justice, including both seasons of the series so far, the comics, and the video game. If you have not seen, read, or played all of the material and are spoiler wary, then consider this your warning. And with all that, let's dive in. So I touched on a few things that we know about you in the intro, and you and I have talked a little bit like last week before we even had this, and we've chatted through the email as well. You reached out to us to tell us about you and, about you listening to our show, which we appreciate. But tell us a little bit more about you. You live in Toronto. You've been working on this fan film, but kind of what do you do on a day-to-day basis? I can see by your room you're a DC Comics fan. In fact, one of the art pieces we have on our website, you got printed and it's on your wall?
It's a 16 by 16 poster. I'm not sure the exact dimensions, but it's one of the big posters you could find in stores. I printed it out, yeah.
How did you get that done?
I just took the image, got it enlarged, and took it to a printing company. It costed $40, but it was definitely worth it.
Yeah, it's a killer picture. But did you manage to get a high-res? I know I'm going off track, sorry. But did you get a high-res image of that? Because I don't know if the picture that we have online is particularly good.
I was able to find a high-res, and also I was able to scale that up with Photoshop. I was able to scale it up and enhance everything a little more so it could be in a bigger print.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So you have a lot of DC stuff in the background, but I also see that you have like the Infinity Gauntlets back there, yeah. And you and I were talking about you're also a Spider-Man fan, which I think if I say that the Bat family is like a gateway drug to DC Comics for most people, would you agree that maybe Spider-Man's kind of a gateway for many people into Marvel as well?
Spider-Man is definitely the most recognizable Marvel hero, at least in my opinion, but most regarded as the most recognizable Marvel hero.
Yeah.
Captain America also, because Captain America is kind of a symbol. But if people think Marvel Comics, it's like, oh, cool, Spider-Man. Because Spider-Man, every kid knows Spider-Man,
Right, because every kid wants to be Spider-Man because he's a relatable character, right?
Right, yes.
And, we bring that up, like the Spectacular Spider-Man series that Greg Weisman also produced is a fantastic series.
Loved that series, yes.
So you've clearly been a comics fan for, a little while. Will we say maybe all your life?
So I grew up watching Batman animated series, Teen Titans, Justice League, a little bit of Spider-Man, but I had way too high standards after watching something like Justice League.
No, I hear you. I was a big fan. Did you watch Wolverine and the X-Men?
Yes, fantastic show.
God, that was such a good show as well.
X-Men is my favorite, yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So after you watching something like Justice League, like how did you hear about Young Justice? Did you hear about it? Did you get a chance to watch it as it was coming out? Did you hear about it ahead of time? Did you stumble on it like I did? Like what's your story?
So this is getting a little into how I started reading comics. So
perfect.
I've been a superhero fan all my life, but I kind of lost interest after I turned 8 or 9. I stopped watching the superhero shows, and I kind of dropped off a little. I always secretly loved the stuff, but I wasn't really into it. Then in 2012, I started, I think in January around my birthday, somebody bought me some New 52 comics. And I started reading them, and I loved them. I thought they were fantastic.
Which ones did you get?
Justice League. I loved Justice League. Green Lantern and Green Arrow. Those were the 3. They picked me up like 3 issues of each, and I read through them. I loved them. They were great. The art was fantastic, the writing, and I just got to relive some of the characters I used to love, again, in a different fashion.
Nice.
So I started reading comics. Instead of, picking up single issues, I went to my library and just took out a bunch of volumes and started reading those through. And I fell in love with it so fast.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing because there was no going to the library to pick up graphic novels when I was a kid. And I love the fact that you can go and you can do that and it's available. Because people who have been listening to me or in the gaming industry or here know that I'm a huge believer in gaming with kids and reading with kids whatever they want to read. Don't ever tell my kid they shouldn't be reading something because you're too snooty about it. My kid will read lots of things, but telling them they can't read something they're excited about, instead use it as a gateway, right? To get them to read all kinds of stuff. Anyway, sorry, I've been soapbox there, but
no problem.
That's awesome.
So continuing, I became so involved with it. I loved the characters. I started reading more comics. I did more thorough research on the characters originally because I wanted to know more about them. And then I started watching almost every DC animated movie and DC TV show out there.
Sure.
When finally, June 2nd, because that's when it premiered, I went to a friend's house to play Injustice, ironically. And him and his dad, when I arrived, were watching Bloodlines, Season 2, Episode 6? Yeah, 6. And I just remember seeing the shot of Flash and Kid Flash and Jay Garrick and Impulse, and I was like, oh my god, what is this?
What is this?
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it was fantastic. I watched through to the end of the episode, and I loved it. I loved the animation. I loved the voice acting. I loved the design of the characters. I was like, what is this show? This is amazing. And the guy's dad explained to me it's Young Justice. It's this great show. And when I got home, I bought the entire show on iTunes, and I watched through the entire Season 1 and the first 6 episodes of Season 2. Fell in love with it immediately. It was I couldn't stop talking about it.
Sure, yeah.
Such a
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
That didn't happen to me at all. My wife didn't at all get super tired of me talking about it. And then she watched it and she was like, oh my god, this is not what I thought it was. And I'm like,
exactly.
Yes!
Same with a lot of my friends. I introduced it to so many people. But getting back to it, so I watched through Season 1 and the first few episodes of Season 2, and as episodes premiered, I started watching them. Sure. Yes, Endgame, I cried for sure. It was Endgame, come on. And I loved it. And I've seen the show over a good 11 times. I've recommended it to over 20 friends who I've watched the show with, around quite a few of them. And they've all gone on to love the show. It's amazing. It has a real soft spot for me. I really love it.
So what is it about? I mean, I get it. You don't have to tell me. But as an exercise, what is it specifically about Young Justice that you connect with? Because when I was watching it, I was 40. When you were watching it, you said it was what, 2011, 2012?
Yeah, so
right?
I was
11?
12.
12, yeah. So this is something about this show appealed to a 12-year-old in the same way, or not in the same way maybe, but there's something that drew you to it in a way that I'm assuming is different than drew me to it, but it drew us both to it. Can you at all articulate what it was that drew you?
Yeah, first of all, okay, when I was 12, I think it was more just all the characters. Mm-hmm. Like, since I grew up watching Justice League and Teen Titans, there was never that crossover, I always felt when I was watching Teen Titans, where's Batman?
That's a really good point. Yeah,
exactly. And so that's why I fell in love with it at first. And then I remember, because I watched the show once over, and I was like, great, show's over now. And I didn't get back to it for a while. I mean, obviously I would talk about it here and there, and I was into comics, but I remember, I think 2014... I watched the show again, and I was 14, and I saw it in a whole new light. I mean,
right.
I wasn't as mature as when I was 12, and I just recognized so many themes and the deep, complex characters, everything behind it. It just made it was so much more meaningful to me, and as a show, it was so much more meaningful. So that's when I started recommending it to everybody. And
were there specific characters or storylines that you related to, or that you reflected on, or maybe you knew your friends would understand? Do you know what I mean? Because you're really at what I would suspect would have been the target age group for the show from a cliched publishing kind of standpoint. A 14-year-old or 13-year-old wants to watch a show, theoretically, we're told, about 16, 17, 18-year-olds who are doing the things and experiencing the things that someone at the age you were at are anticipating having to deal with, right? Does that make sense, or am I making that up?
No, it does make sense, but I'm going to be honest, I didn't feel that much. That's not a problem necessarily, it's just I didn't feel I could relate per se to the characters because none of them really had much to do with me. But
Interesting. Okay.
At the same time, I felt like if I was a teenager in that situation, that's exactly how I'd react. Like Robin, his personality, everything, what he's hiding with his therapy session with Black Canary.
Oh my God, I love that scene.
Exactly, right? Or the scene where Batman kind of does his own thing, where he says, where Wonder Woman says
Wonder Woman calls him out on it, and he's like, because I don't want him to be like me. Yeah, I love it.
Exactly, and I love that relationship, right? So even though it doesn't relate to me on a personal level, I can still understand it, and I still think it's amazing that they were able to pull something like that off. And characters like Red Arrow or Superboy, which are my other two, Robin, Red Arrow, and Superboy are my top 3 favorites.
Nice.
And just each of their struggles and each of their strengths, their personalities, all unique in their own way, it's It's so amazing. And even if they are my favorite characters, there are so many characters in the show, but
sure,
none of them get thrown out the window. All
Yep.
of them have their own personalities, struggles, and strengths. Like, no character goes unnoticed. I
Right.
mean, the smallest characters get a spotlight, which is amazing. And it's really hard for a lot of shows to pull that off in such a spectacular fashion. And that's why I love it so much.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that the characters are great, but it's really the writing, the ensemble cast, how they pulled it off. Like the actual creative endeavor itself is one of the
Yes.
things that really drew you to it. Does that make sense?
Yes, and also the animation, spectacular. Like, it's, I mean, Justice League was back in 2003, so obviously this is way better than something like that. In terms of animation, not
No, yeah. It's just a style thing. No, I hear you. Yeah,
right. And the voice acting, there was not a single bad voice
yeah.
actor.
I know. The voice acting is so good.
It's incredible.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully by the time this airs, we actually have some of the voice actors coming on the show, which we're really excited
Right.
about. So I'm hoping that we'll have some of those aired by the time this airs, but if not, keep an ear out for that. So
Yes.
I have so many questions for them. So let's change gears a little bit, and I want to talk about something that I found fascinating from when you first emailed us. So back in my day, when I was a kid, if I loved something like Young Justice, the best outlet that I had back in 1980 or 82, 83, which is the age that you're talking about, was to run a role-playing game about it. I mean, freaking Champions, the superhero role-playing game, didn't come out till 1983. So that would have been my local, output for that. But putting together a fan film wouldn't have even crossed my mind. And if it did, it would have looked like a really bad version of Super 8. But I'm living in the future now, and it fascinates me to know what it's like to be a fan now and to have the technical opportunities to create a fan film like the one that you're working on. There's so many amazing fan films out there, special effects, and even some of the acting is really impressive for what I would have considered a fan film. When I think fan film, I think Star Wars Troops from like 1990, right? Like it's just, your people on the street you find and put together or whatever. So first of all, let's talk about Young Justice. What is it about Young Justice that inspired you to write this script, much less do a full fan film? Was it what we're talking about, kind of the whole production of it? Or was it characters or a storyline? How did you get inspired by it?
This is the funniest story. So I don't tell this a lot because not a lot of people know it, but when I think the project got canceled, but back in, I don't even remember the year, but there was a project that was announced.
Talking about the live action Teen Titans on
Yep.
TNT. Yep.
Yes, that was announced, and I wanted to audition for the role of Robin because I love Robin, and he's
Sure.
one of my favorite characters in comics. Now, I've never done an audition or acting in my life, so it was
Sure.
it was a tough goal to reach.
Yeah, I would have also wanted to, try out for Robin, and I'm a 46-year-old man, so I'm feeling you.
Right.
Feeling you.
But,
right now.
but I felt like I was in the right age category. I really felt like I could do it because of how much I knew and loved the character, and how much I think my acting skills are pretty good, even though I had never tried them to that point.
Sure.
Yeah,
We all want to believe that. Sure.
Yeah, I was very inspired, and I tried putting together a small audition tape. I would say, and it just didn't work out
Sure.
at all, and I kind of just dropped off of it.
Sure. Kudos for putting together an audition tape. I would have been super nervous about that. That's fantastic. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No problem. So I remember, but that was years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think I wanted. This is really weird because I don't reflect on it that much.
Okay. It feels like something that just kind of happened organically.
Not right. That sounds a little weird. I think originally at the beginning of last year, I really wanted to make a film because I had just started getting really into film, and I just wanted to make something. I wanted to make something meaningful. I wanted to make something good, and so I remember I kept getting flashbacks to that what I was trying to do back then, and I was like, you know what? It's not with a different concept. Obviously, it's not the worst idea. So I talked to two of my closest friends, and they were really supportive of it. They were like, you know what, if you want to try this out, why not try writing up a script, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, sure.
And writing is one of my strong suits. I love writing. I mean, English is my favorite course in school. I even do it out of the classroom on solo things. Writing is just something I love. And so I decided to write a script for this film centered around Robin in between Young Justice Season 1 and 2. because of how much Young Justice means to me and how much I think Robin is
Yeah.
in his best form in Young Justice. I think that's the best adaptation that you can get out there.
Yeah.
And so I put together the script. I think it was around 30 pages because I wanted it to be a short film. I didn't want to do a full-length film. And
Right. So the way scripts usually translate is about 1 minute of film per page. So it's about a 30-minute fan film. Might get edited down to 25. That all seems reasonable. Yeah.
Right. And I remember I showed it to my friends and they were like, you know what, this is great, but I think we can do this here or this here. And at first, and only for a little while, I was a little taken aback by it. You know, I was like, oh, this is kind of my film. I want to do my thing. But then I realized, then I was like, I'm going to give this a chance. And I said to them, guys, if you would have edits, what would they be? And there were a lot of them.
Yeah, sure.
we used Google Hangouts and Google Docs, and over a long process, we went through the entire script and we basically rewrote all of it. The concepts were staying the same, the characters stayed the same, and the emotion and tone stayed the same.
Yeah, like the through line of what you wanted to stay the same, but the technique of telling that story changed through the edits.
Yes.
I think that's it's such an important thing for all of us to learn. Like, I think I've said it on the show a couple times, but like the difference between a 200-page novel and an 800-page novel that's edited down to 200 pages is those extra 600 pages are still in that 200-page edit. All the feeling, the intent, the through line, it's just that it's tighter, smoother, right? We've all watched a film, and I don't know if maybe we've realized it consciously, but I look at a film and go like, yeah, that was like a second draft instead of the 20th draft that every film should really have. You know what I mean? Easy things to fix, loose things that can be tightened up, easy fixes, and being able to have the maturity to be able to listen to those edits. It's hard. It's so hard.
Really, it was. And at first, like I said, I was a little taken aback by it. But once I started, and the people I brought on were huge fans of Young Justice and DC Comics. The only people I would even trust to help me with something like this. And just they brought in so many unique and fantastic ideas to change what I was looking for. Still what I was looking for, but just executed in such a better fashion.
Well, you answered one of my questions, which was, what are you using? And you said you used Google Docs. I was going to ask if you were using like Scrivener or some other like writing format. So you guys had Google Docs basically, and were could all work on the project at the same time?
Honestly, yeah. We were all doing Google Docs and Google Hangouts at the same time. And as most people know, I don't know if all the listeners know, but Google Docs is a live editing thing, so people can come in and edit, and whoever's at the viewing the document at the time will see the edits. And so that's the system we did, and it worked incredibly well because it was well organized, and nobody was deleting everything on the script as a joke. Everybody was mature enough to handle it, and it worked out.
Sure, you all had the same drive to do something good.
Exactly.
So, were there blogs, were there books, were there things about screenwriting that you had looked at beforehand, or was this kind of like a first pass and kind of see what it was, what you had, and then tweak it from there?
Honestly, I didn't really look at much other things besides from my own writing, which I didn't look at. It's right. I decided I just want to make this my own, and looking into script writing didn't really come to mind actually.
Okay.
Because I had written a few film scripts before, and also I just felt like I had the ability without needing other things. It's funny because if I think about it now, I didn't even think maybe I should look into screenwriting. I just thought I could do it.
You were writing a story that you wanted to write and get it on the page. Okay, so this is another thing that I think is fantastic, right? When you're starting out and you're doing something like this, like a fan film or a novel or whatever you're doing, one of the most important things in my mind is focusing on expressing what you want to express on the page. So there's the art of writing, and then there's the craft of writing. Right? The art of writing is what we're all excited about, right? We want that thing, whatever it is that's driving us to put this story on a page. The craft of writing is harder, and it's the things like you got to go to film school, and you got to know the system before you can break the system, all these kinds of cliches, that kind of thing. That's the craft part that's harder. But to get through the craft part, it's important to really indulge the art part, because that's what's kind of feeding so many people. I don't know that many people who were like, I guess I have a few stories to tell, but what I really like is like this crafting part. It's got to be a balance, I think, and most people are more motivated by the art part. You didn't get bogged down in the process to start. You dove in with your friends, got a story down. The craft part can come whenever, right? I'm fascinated. So keep going with your story here. So you worked with your friends on this script, and then you mentioned to me earlier that in a previous conversation that this team of people that you're working with, that you guys had already raised and spent several $1,000s on sets and costuming. So writing a script to me is fine. Like, I'm like, yeah, okay, I can write a script, get an idea on a page. That next step is the thing that would terrify me. Now, I live in San Diego, and I have a lot of friends who work in the independent film industry, so I could certainly draw on their expertise. But I like to have a concept of like a bigger picture of the whole process, and I don't know how that works. So where did you get like sets and the props and the costume pieces? Have you recruited people to help you make them? Were you getting them offline? Tell me about that.
Okay, so the sets are actually not that complicated because my film is really not a big action set piece. It's more of an emotion-driven story because that's what I relate to and I love most. And that's what I think Young Justice can do so well while being a superhero show. So obviously there are those little action sequences here and there, but it's mostly an emotion-driven story. So I don't need big backdrops or whatever it might be.
Right.
And the locations, actually, I have a family friend who works around town and was able to get me locations that I needed, which aren't even that expansive. So that wasn't really a hard thing to do. But the costuming and props is a different story.
Sure. Okay. Makes sense.
The first thing before that is we needed, at first I realized, I looked back at a lot of fan films. Some great, like Nightwing the series. Some not so great.
Sure.
Which I don't need to mention. And something that a lot of fan films don't get right is because people jump into this is audio. Fan films...
Oh,
audio,
yeah, I guess that's a good point. Yeah.
Is because they mostly use the microphone built into their camera, and they would not use an external microphone, which totally screws it up.
Yeah, you're right. That's a really interesting point. Sorry, I'm just contemplating that right. I think a lot of times, so I can watch a film and know what I like, but there are certain, I can break down story, but I have a hard time breaking down technical stuff. But you're right. There's a lot of fan films where I'm like, oh, you know what? You're right. What it really bugged me is the fact that I couldn't hear what was happening, or
you hear wind or
echoing or fading, or I want to hear I want to hear your story you're trying to tell me. Let me be there. Yeah. No, it's a good point.
Yeah, and it's not only because maybe those people can't afford, good audio equipment, which is generally the case, but also they just totally overlook it. They usually think, hey, we can just do the microphone from the camera, right? And later they realize it's terrible, but they go with it anyway, so they don't really have a choice. Right. So my first thing to do was I was like, okay, if we're doing a film, it needs to be good, and it needs to look good. It needs to be cinematic. So because I had a summer job as a photographer, I was thinking of getting my own DSLR camera anyways.
Wait. Sorry, I'm gonna hover on that for a minute. So you had a summer job as a photographer. I mean, most people like flip burgers. So how do you get a summer job as a photographer? How does that happen?
Yeah, there was this camp I worked at as a counselor in training close by to me, and I went back to get a job this year, the past 2016 summer, and I was applying as a junior counselor, but I mentioned, they were asking my qualities, and I mentioned I'm really into film. And they said, you know what, we really need a promotional video for our camp. We haven't had one in years.
Nice.
So my summer job, for the first month, I was taking pictures of everything and taking video of everything, and I put together a promotional video for this camp. And second month, I was just photographer. But it was such a learning experience in terms of photography. Yeah, photography is kind of a side hobby. So photography is a huge learning experience. Film, I mean, just producing and getting everything together, like a clip show, was really hard in itself, and it made me learn a lot about editing. It was great. It was a great experience.
I think that's fantastic. I mean, and again, that shows like, do what you enjoy, right? You're going to do this thing, and you need a job, so you're going to get a job and doing a thing, but expressing what it is that you're excited about, it's probably going to be something that somebody else is not excited about, and they would love if you would do it, like doing a promotional video, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Sorry to derail your story, but I think it's important to see where some of this experience and some of the things you're doing come from. So this is how you started to learn about audio a little bit and about film. Plus, it sounds like you watched a ton of stuff to like figure out what you liked and what you didn't like about the thing, right?
Yeah.
All right. So you did this job, and then you were talking about getting your own camera.
yeah. I used the camp's camera for that. They had a DSLR they gave me. Great camera. No complaints. But I realized after the summer I'm going to want my own because I'm really into this now, and I would love to have something of professional grade. Originally, we were going to film the film with two, like, $300 camcorders, which were okay, but not the best. And I was okay with that, but I realized I could have something a little higher of quality while supporting my hobbies as they are. So I saved up and I bought a Nikon D3300 DSLR camera. You might not know what that is, but it's...
Well, my thought process here, for part of the reason of asking you on, is to help. Like, there's probably a lot of people who want to do something like this. Right. So what is it about that camera that drew? What research did you do? Why did you choose that particular camera?
Yeah, so the camera, I worked with a Nikon over the summer. It was just a lower model. So I already had 2 months of experience with Nikon cameras. Okay. And I loved it. It was just, it fits perfectly in my hands. It takes great quality pictures. It's easier to use. Okay. And it's just a great quality camera. So I wanted to get a little higher model. And also, something very important is a lens. When you're doing film or photography, a lens is arguably more important than the camera in most cases. So I needed to get a good cinematic lens. Okay. That looks cinematic enough and gives the right feel. So I got a 55 to 70 millimeter lens that zooms really good, and it's a very good lens I did thorough research on. So you kind of, obviously you want to balance cost with effectiveness, right? Because none of us have a ton of money, speaking as a podcast, right? So this seemed to be a balanced cost. Like, how much did those two things cost you to put together, the camera and the lens? It's actually amazing. So the camera did cost me $700. Okay. It was gifted to me by a relative. So, because I was planning on getting a camera and saving up for one, but a close relative said, you know what? You really are into this. I'm going to get this for you. And that's nice. Great. Use your resources, man. Exactly. But the lens it came with was pretty standard, and I was thinking of getting a new lens, but lenses cost hundreds, if not thousands of dollars sometimes. Okay. All right. So I went to New York for a quick trip, totally unrelated, and this family friend was clearing out their house, and they had a whole box of Nikon lenses that had not been used in years. Right. No, nice. Hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of Nikon lenses. And this lens that I had been looking at happened to be in there. And they didn't want the lenses. They just gave them to me. So oh my God, that's fantastic. I ended up with this fantastic lens, which has a really good value. And yeah. That's fantastic. Yeah. I'm also a big believer that I think if you're trying to do the thing that you're really passionate about, not to get too woo-woo about it, but things tend to fall into place. You know what I mean? Like, things tend to happen when you're excited about it because your own energy is feeding into what's happening, and you are more aware of what opportunities are coming up. Like, you're looking for those opportunities and hopefully taking advantage of them in a good way. That's fantastic, man. Congrats. Thank you. So I got a little off topic, just a little bit. It's fine. I'm an off-topic guy. So my next concern was audio, obviously. So I went out and I bought... We already had a set budget at that time. I don't like to disclose numbers, but that's fine. Yeah, it was a pretty decent budget. So I researched sound because honestly, I didn't really know how to do it. I saw in most behind the scenes of films they had these huge poles with microphones off the end of them. Yeah, like the boom pole, the gaffer, or whatever they're called. Yeah, and I thought it was going to be super expensive, and I got really worried. But I realized I can make a pretty good boom pole setup. So I bought a $200 Zoomer, which is an audio recorder, because once you have the microphone, you actually need something to record with if you're not plugging it into a computer or a camera. And if it's going to be on a pole, it needs something to record with, and you need a good device for that. So I bought a Zoomer, and then I bought the pole, which was only around $40 on Amazon, and it extends really long. Okay. I don't know the exact height, but I think it's 10 feet or more. So these are things you were buying like off of Amazon, off websites? Yes, I was buying all the stuff off Amazon, and then I bought I had to buy a 50-foot XLR cable, which was... Oh, right, of course. Yeah, which was only around $25, and then I needed a good microphone, so I bought a $400, $300 Asden. I don't know the exact model, but it's a very good microphone. Okay.
So how do you know it's a good mic? Like, was this, you said you were watching so some of your research was behind the scenes about how films are made and what people are doing. Were you listening to podcasts too, or like reading or web blogs? Like, tell me that process of learning what you needed for this mic.
I was reading up a lot. I didn't really do much podcasts because as much as I love podcasts, for actually finding information, that's not really what I use them for.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
But I did plenty of research through online forums and asking my own questions to people.
Right. Yeah. Forums. Were there particular like filmmaking or independent film forums?
Yes. I don't remember the specific names of them, but there were websites dedicated to budget filmmakers, telling them on this amount of budget which things you should get. And this was one of the top-rated microphones, and I bought it and I loved it. I tested it on a few different things, and it's fantastic.
So you've got a boom, you've got a mic, you've got the cables, right? You've got the camera, you've got the lens.
Yep.
You've got a script in progress, right? And you've got some locations. Okay, so you got that kind of stuff. So can you tell me, you don't have to tell me every character that's in the film, but like you said it focuses on Robin. How many main is Robin the point of view character? And then you have like, who are the supporting cast characters for the story?
Well, it's obviously mainly focused on Dick Grayson, Robin, and that's the main focus of the story. But since I wanted to be more of a Young Justice feel and a Young Justice story, obviously more cast members had to be included. So I don't want to say them all, but Kid Flash is the kind of best friend figure, you know?
Sure, yeah, of course. Makes sense.
As he normally would be. And a lot more of the Young Justice cast is present.
Okay.
I don't want to say too much about it.
No, it's fine. But like, basically what I'm asking is this Kid Flash and Robin sitting on a couch having a chat, like one room shot, or are we talking like a cast of 50? Like, what are we talking about? Like,
yeah, I tried to keep it small scale because actors are very hard to find. So this film is very revolved around Robin. Kid Flash is not a main focus. Robin is the main focus.
Sure.
And Kid Flash is a supporting character.
Robin needs a foil, someone to talk to, that kind of thing. That's what Wally's good for.
Exactly.
Okay.
The film itself is very serious in tone. It's a little different to most of Young Justice, although Young Justice has had its very serious moments. As overall as a show, this film is very different in tone. Because I wanted to make the Young Justice story and cast a little deeper than it already is. I wanted to just add a little more emotional depth to it. So this film is very emotional. It's not a happy-go-lucky film at all. And without giving away too much, if that's, yeah.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about necessarily the story of the film. It's more about the process of what's going on. So,
right.
So let's move into basically talking about the actors. Now, you live in Toronto, right? So, I mean, Toronto, I'm not completely unfamiliar with the film and TV scene, but there's a lot of TV shows and films. There's an industry there in Toronto. So are the actors that you're doing for this fan film of your own, are you drawing just on like the people that you know? Did you throw out like, hey, I'm doing a fan film about this thing. Does anybody want to come do it with me? Or are there family members? Like what's that process?
First of all, yes, Toronto is very big in the film industry, mostly as a location, but also, TIFF is huge. That's a Toronto International Film Festival.
Oh, okay.
That's where a lot of short films and even some premiere films get taken off. Take off as box office successes or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Arrow's shot here sometimes.
Wasn't Firefly filmed there too, or was that in LA? I can't remember. There's a lot of stuff that's filmed in Toronto. A lot of TV shows filmed in Toronto. Yeah. But
I'm not really connected to that. Obviously, this is my first big project, and I'm my own company technically. So
yeah, sure, yeah.
I had to do this stuff on my own. I drew together a cast of my friends who are all into DC Comics and Young Justice and also happen to be really good actors. My friend, he literally is Kid Flash. Like, his hair stands up and he has the exact personality of Kid Flash. Plus, Kid Flash is his favorite character on Young Justice. So it worked out so perfectly.
Wally would love Wally.
Exactly.
Right?
And it's just, he's a great guy, and that's why I brought him on. And the rest of the cast found themselves too. Some of them not even fans of the source material, interested in acting, great actors, and I introduced them to the source material.
Sure.
So, yeah.
So you mentioned to me earlier that you're going to start production in the spring. Did you say that's what you said, right? So is that a creative decision based on the time that it takes for like pre-production, or is it a weather kind of location thing for you? Like when you decided you wanted to do that, do you have a lot of outside sets, or these are a lot of inside locations?
Yeah, so it's a mix of inside and outside, but this script has been in process for a good 7 months, mostly because of school or whatever it might
Sure,
be.
yeah.
And
yeah.
it just takes so much time to prep something like this. Costuming and props, which I didn't really talk about, is
Oh,
huge.
yeah. I forgot I wanted to talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. It's huge. I mean, even if we aren't doing big action sequences every 5 seconds, to keep a Young Justice feel with the characters that are popping up in the film, the costumes needed to be there, and the props, and whatever it might be. So, yeah, I spent a lot on costumes and props, and just getting all that. Obviously, I didn't have the money at the time, so I had to save up and wait and this and that. And
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. So were you purchasing bits and pieces? Do you have a friend of yours who's into cosplaying who kind of knows where to get these things? Like, it's pretty amazing what you can get for costuming these days. Like, how did you go through that?
So, 2 of the costumes out of the main cast, Robin and Kid Flash, I couldn't make those costumes. Those are very hard to pull off.
Yeah, yeah.
So we tried making a Kid Flash costume, but it didn't work out. So I bought a full body Kid Flash costume so when things are popular, a lot of Chinese knockoffs come out of them. And it was really funny because on The Flash, the CW show, Kid Flash is being introduced.
Yeah, yeah.
And a lot of eBay sellers started making full body Kid Flash outfits.
Okay.
And they look spot on, perfect. Like the craft and the leather and even though it's fake leather, it's fantastic.
Sure. Huh.
And so that's what we got for Kid Flash. Robin, there are many costumes out there, but there are even some Young Justice based costumes.
Themed ones, yeah.
Were very good, and that's what I bought too.
I've seen some fantastic ones at San Diego Comic-Con, man. Some of these kids, I mean, I've walked by some kids going, Young Justice, and like just pointed them as I walked by, and they're like, yeah, it's my favorite. And they're so excited.
Yeah, exactly. So those are the 2 costumes that I couldn't do on my own. And also there were so many different props and things we had to get for Robin. The grapple gun, the birdering, the smoke bombs, the belt, the mask. Robin was a huge process.
Yeah.
Plus my hair is blonde, so we had to buy a wig.
Yeah. Okay.
And not just a cheap party store wig, like an actual wig that would look convincing.
You know, it's really funny to compare a costume like, say, Superboy's cargo pants and a t-shirt to
That's what I was getting to,
someone like Robin. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Or even McGann for that matter. I would think that McGann wouldn't be terrible, but
no, not
Robin,
really.
And even Kid Flash, that whole shaped mask thing, that's tough. That's gotta be tough.
That's why I was so relieved when we found a pre-made, because we were working on a Kid Flash costume that we were trying to make it work, but it was so hard.
Yeah.
And then this pre-made thing popped up, and I was like, oh my gosh, thank you.
But does it fit? Like, I'm trying to figure out, like, how do you get it to make sure that it's going to fit his head? Like, a body fit is a little different, but, like, I don't know. Do they have face measurements? Like, I don't know.
We actually couldn't really prepare for that. So
okay.
Most masks are one size fit all. So
yeah. Or none. One size fit
exactly.
none, yeah.
And it just happened to fit perfectly on his head.
Oh,
so.
good. All right. See?
Yeah.
It's all coming together.
Exactly.
Nice.
And so what I was getting to was also, from the few other characters that pop up in the film, I could say Superboy. His costume was very easy to put together.
Sure.
We got a really nice Superboy t-shirt that was pre-made and is sold in a lot of places. Cargo pants and the gloves that he has in Season 2, the fingerless gloves.
Oh, yeah.
And that's it.
and boots or whatever, yeah. Right.
Which weren't even that important. And the other characters that pop up in the film, also, their costumes are not that complicated.
Did you choose them because their costumes weren't that complicated?
Actually, no. It does matter from a story standpoint, but I can see why you would think that.
I mean, because when you're doing something like this, a lot of times you might need to think about stuff like that. Like, oh man, I'd like to have Martian Manhunter shape changing into a dragon, but it's important for the story, but I can't. You know what I mean? So it's important to keep everything balanced as well as you can, you know?
And I want to quickly add this. Funny you mentioned that, because something very important I wanted to have in this film, because it's a Robin-based film, is Batman, obviously.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And no way I could get somebody to act as Batman. It's around Toronto, like it's not that easy. So I reached out to a few different cosplayers, and somebody is filming themselves on a green screen who happens to have this guy happens to have a lot of good filming equipment, and he's worked in fan films before, and I've given him the right stuff, and he's going to film himself in his Batman costume saying all the lines, and I'm going to edit it in.
Whoa, where is this guy? Where he's not in Toronto, he's somewhere else?
No, I think he's in California.
Okay, that's Okay. Sorry, I'm wrapping my brain around that. What an interesting way to solve a problem.
Yes.
That is, sorry, I'm still wrapping my brain around it. You're giving somebody the script and the lines, and he's filming it with a green screen in the background, and then you'll be able to put in what you need in the background. Is it going to be a camera? I'm sorry. Is it going to be a camera pan to him, or like is Robin going to be green screened in, or is it going to be cutting to him? Like, you don't need to tell me what the scene is, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, luckily I didn't do action sequences where Batman and Robin are fighting someone off, because that would be almost impossible to pull off in a good fashion.
Yeah.
I mean, the only two scenes Batman appears in, one he's kind of scolding Robin, which I can just do a camera back and forth. And the other, he's on the phone with Robin, so it's just a cut back and forth from him on the phone to me on the phone. Exactly. He's not he's obviously a very important element of the film, but he's not a huge element of the film, and I didn't need to put that much into it. So,
interesting. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. So you've got a few friends that are working on this with you, and then post-editing, post-special effects, post. Are you doing all of that yourself? Do you have other friends who happen to have skill sets that help, or...
I'm planning on doing most of it myself, yes. There are a few other friends that have offered to help with editing who don't have much expertise, but they said they're going to try because they really want to help me out. But I have been doing a lot of research on special effects.
Are there particular programs you're looking at using, or
yes.
like what in particular?
So I've been using Sony Vegas Pro until now to edit most of my stuff.
Say that one more time. Sony Vegas Pro?
Sorry. Sony Vegas Pro, yeah.
Okay, Sony Vegas Pro. Okay, I've never heard of that one.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So, but I'm going to upgrade a little to Adobe Premiere Pro.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of that. That's a big editing software that was actually used to make Deadpool, surprisingly.
Okay.
That's what I'm going to be used to editing the film.
Is that expensive? Like something like that? Is this a $400 or $500, or is it like thousands of dollar program, or like?
It's pretty expensive, but not that expensive.
Okay, so it's within reason.
Yes, it's a subscription kind of thing. So it's
gotcha.
Yeah. And that's what I'm using to edit. But for special effects, there's a program called Adobe After Effects that does 3D compositing and basically everything available to you as long as you know how to use it.
Sure.
So and all the special effects in Deadpool were made in After Effects. So I've just been doing tons of research, tons of tests, and I've been able to pull off some really cool things.
Okay, awesome.
But I am doing all the editing myself. I think. Sound is where I need to research more, because I haven't done sound editing yet, and that's going to be a huge part, especially when you incorporate soundtrack and sound effects and dialogue all together mixed in a good fashion. Yeah. I'm going to have to do a lot of research, but I'm not up to that yet.
Okay. No, that's fair. That's all really fair. So you have kind of your target filming dates, right? And then how long do you think that it might take you to do what you're doing? Are you like budgeting a couple of weeks? Do you have any estimates for things like post-production or a release date, or, it's your first big project. So I think some filmmakers kind of have an idea of what that is without thinking too hard about it. But have you thought about that?
So I've planned it out. Shooting it will only take about 10 days, and they don't have to be 10 days in a row.
10 consecutive days, right? That makes sense.
Yeah, 10 consecutive days. Post-production is something I'm a little... skeptical about, because there are many different elements of it.
Sure.
And you can't really estimate for it, but I am hoping for a fall 2017 release. That's what I'm going for.
Okay, got it. So fall. All right. Fantastic.
It's funny, actually. Oh my gosh, I totally blanked on this. But one of the reasons I wanted to make the film was because... Oh my god, I can't believe I blanked on this.
No, what is it? I'm excited. Tell me.
Yeah, I should have said it before, but... I love the show so much, and this is when I was getting really into it again and recommending it to so many people. I was like, the show needs to be brought back.
Yeah, sure.
How could it have gotten canceled?
Right.
And I was like, you know what? If I make this film, and it's good, and it's quality, and it's meaningful, and the fan base recognizes it and notices it and advocates for it, maybe DC will recognize that they really lost out on something, and season 3 will finally become a reality. Yeah. And then it became a reality a few months later.
Well, I mean, that, of course, amongst the many reasons why we wanted to do this podcast, that was also part of doing the podcast. Yeah. And I think we had 2 episodes out before they made that announcement. So, which worked out fine for us. But
doesn't mean I'm losing any inspiration, but that was my original,
No, it makes perfect sense. So that's fantastic. Thanks so much for sharing all of the background and the things that you're doing and working on. I'm really excited to hear what kind of processes and things that are I wouldn't say easily available, but certainly much more easily available than when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know where I would have gotten a sound boom in small town Kentucky in 1980. But is there anything else I'd like to add about the film, the project, or anything you'd like to share?
Just a quick note that my film is really for the fans. I mean, I wouldn't be creating it if I wasn't a huge fan.
Sure,
Young
of course.
Justice is just so meaningful to me, and I want to express that in the best way I can by creating something quality that everyone can enjoy. And this is a film for the fans of DC Comics, most importantly, Young Justice, obviously.
Yeah.
But and a little for a general movie-going audience. I'm trying to make it understandable for a movie-going audience as well.
You want it to be accessible. My wife
Yes.
never read DC Comics, and she loved Young Justice.
Yes,
and that was one of the advantages, is that it was accessible because it was about storylines that mattered,
And it's honestly really hard to make it available to a general going audience because you have to have a lot of background in Young Justice to even understand who the characters are. But I am doing my best.
Sure, yeah.
But getting back to the main point, this is a film for the fans, by the fans. And when it releases, everyone's going to be able to see that. And I'm really excited for people to see it.
That's fantastic, man. Thanks so much for spending time with us in the cave, Joseph, even with all of my technical issues on this side of the mic. So where can people find you here on Earth Prime if they want to chat with you about your film?
Right. So currently, my Instagram account for the film is @RobinFilmOfficial. We haven't posted anything yet. Right now, the date recording this is January 18th, 2017. I'm not sure when this is going to come out, but there might be stuff on there available. Even if not, give it a follow, check it out, @RobinFilmOfficial. And if you want to DM me, I would love to discuss Young Justice of the film with you. I am very open.
Thanks to everyone for sharing time with us. You can find us on Twitter @the YJ Files, on Facebook at www.facebook.com/crashingthemode, and on our website, www.crashingthemode.com. If you have questions or thoughts about doing your own fan film, writing your own script, or a project around Young Justice, I highly encourage you to network with Joseph and with other fans who share that passion. As you may be able to tell from our discussion sessions, I've learned that supporting a wide range of intelligent, imaginative, and skilled people in the projects that they love makes my own world a fascinating place, and I can draw on those connections myself regularly. As you can tell by today's conversation, you are not alone in your fandom. If you enjoy our show, please consider sharing it with a friend. You can also support the show by giving us a 5-star review on iTunes or your podcatcher of choice. The ratings really do help others find our show. If you do leave us a rating, please let us know, especially if you're outside the US. We have to look a little harder for those. And even though Season 3 has been officially announced, please continue to spread the word to friends and family about the series. #keep binging YJ on Netflix. #buy YJ comics on Comixology. Pick up the comics, get yourself up to speed for the Season 3 premiere. And as always,
stay whelmed, everybody.
You've been listening to Whelmed, the Young Justice Files podcast. Our computer is voiced by Madison Ray. Our theme was composed by Emily Mio. Our logo was created by Kevin Bates. Whelmed is a fan-made podcast and is not officially affiliated with DC Comics, DC Entertainment, Warner Brothers Animation, and any other owners of Young Justice or its related source material. As such, these companies have sole ownership of all symbols, images, names, logos, and proprietary material related to Young Justice. Original content of this podcast is ours under Creative Commons. Thanks for listening, and stay whelmed.